Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Our topic today is The Russians Speak. Here's what the Russians are saying about Gaza, Trump, tariffs, and BRICS. And, you know, the old saying says, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. It's important to know what the Russians are saying about us. And that's what we're going to cover today. Before we get into it, yes, 800-200 gold if you have precious metals needs, or if you have an IRA, 401k, you owe it to yourself to call them and make sure you're not going to lose your money. Second thing is, and I'm going to keep the promos just real short today, we're having a prophecy, healing, and deliverance conference. We'd like to have you there. And it's September 11th to 14. And if you'll just go to prophecyclub.com, you can sign up. Okay. So first of all of these are from the RT, which is a Russian website. And I think you'll find it interesting what they're saying about us and Trump, and specifically our financial situation. Okay, so national currencies free BRICS from Western pressure, Russian finance minister. Now, I'm not a financial guy, okay? I'm a prophecy guy. But my best understanding is that America has control of the dollar. And what we do is put sanctions on nations to keep them, and also individuals, to keep them in line with what we want. We think that we're the big boss of the earth, and for a lot of reasons we really are. But the problem is there's been some bosses in control of America that are not good people, duh. So what they do is put these sanctions, specifically on Russia, and they say you can't do this, or sometimes they don't give them their money, and they're getting tired of it. I mean, you can't say that a whole nation, I mean, can you imagine if Russia had control of it, and if Russia were to say, well, America, we're not going to clear your credit cards anymore, in effect. In other words, we're not going to let you use the dollar to buy and sell with anymore. What would we do? Same thing the Russians are doing. We would start a new system to go around it. You can't tell whole nations or even whole companies they can't use your financial system anymore. And that's what America has been doing. And sadly, it's not something recent. It's been going on, I don't even know how long time. So the article says, selling trade in national currencies offers BRICS countries a reliable alternative. In other words, they're having to turn away from the SWIFT system, the dollar system, a reliable alternative to the financial institutions, which can suspend transactions at any moment. Okay, so they just cut you off. What do? You can't just not trade. You can't just not buy and sell. So what do you got to do? You got to come up with another way, and that's what they're doing. Members of the economic bloc have accelerated efforts to reduce reliance on third-party currencies in bilateral trade in recent years, especially after Western sanctions, there it is, led to the freezing of Russia's reserves. That's right, we just lock up their money. If they don't do what we tell them to do, we just lock up their money. They don't like it. We wouldn't like it either. And so they're going around us. So it's us, it's America, and our bad president, our bad leaders that have brought this on ourselves. Western sanctions led to the freezing of Russia's reserves held in dollars and euros following the escalation of the Ukraine conflict. Okay, so they say, so since you went over and attacked Ukraine, we're going to hold back on this. We're going to take this money from you. We're going to do this when you're not doing the right thing. Well, actually, Gorbachev and Reagan made a deal. I've talked about it before. And the deal was, if you'll lower this wall, we will not move 1 inch further to the east. In other words, Russia doesn't trust America. And I've covered that before too, with good reason. America's taken over a lot of countries. It's like 99 countries. And Russia doesn't want to be taken over. All Russia wants to do is to live in peace. I know. That's what we thought America just wants to do. But that's what we want to do. But that's not what people that rule over us want to do. They do want to take over the world because one way or another, they want to bring in the Antichrist and the mark and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so Russia's reserves are held in dollars. And we made a promise when Reagan stood up there and said, Gorbachev, tear down this wall, that we would not move, NATO or any other Western country, would not move 1 inch further to the east, and we have done nothing but break that time and time and time again. Russia actually, I think, has been pretty patient with us, but they've set a red line, and they've said, we're not going to let NATO or the country right next to us, Ukraine, become a NATO nation. It would be kind of like America is not going to put up with nuclear weapons in Juarez, Mexico, or in Canada that can hit Washington, D.C. in under 60 seconds. We're not going to put up with that. Well, the Russians aren't either. You know, Henry Ford said, if there is any one secret to success, it lies in the ability to see things from the other person's point of view and to deal with them from that point of view. Well, America, in their arrogant attitude, have not taken the time to understand Russia's point of view. Russia just wants to, raise their kids, feed their families, like the rest of the world. But the American dictators, that call themselves presidents over the years, have been doing bad things to Russia for many years. And it's not just that one between Gorbachev and Reagan. There's many others. I mean, just do a little bit of research. You can find there's a long list. Anyway, so Russia and the other nations are being forced by us. We're the problem. Being forced to create a whole nother currency to go around the dollar. Now, what's that going to do? Well, we have several prophecies that tell us what that's going to do. That the dollar is going to drop down 30%, zero, worthless as leaves blowing in the wind. I'm shocked that it hasn't already happened because, okay, let's back up. Saudi Arabia, 50 years ago, made an agreement that they would not sell their oil in any other currency other than the dollar. And they held to that until July the 9th of 2024. They made a new agreement that they would then start selling it in yuan, Chinese. Then, of course, Trump comes along, goes down, and hugs and kisses and makes up with them and becomes buddy-buddy. But according to the reports, Saudi Arabia is still selling oil in yuan. Well, that's going to eventually mean that a lot of nations that used to have to keep a bunch of dollars on hand to buy and sell their products, especially crude oil, they had to keep a lot of dollars on hand. So let's just take Germany. They deal in marks, but they had to have a lot of dollars on hand so that they exchange their marks for dollars to buy the crude oil. But now they don't have to do that. And that's what BRICS is doing. They're basically having like some 27 nations that are just totally going around the SWIFT system. Now, when a country no longer needs to have so many dollars on hand, they look around and say, what are we doing with this warehouse full of dollars, so to speak? Let's get rid of some of them. And so they start trading their dollars in. That means they come back to America. And then, of course, America starts seeing these dollars pile up. And who is that sees it? That would be the Federal Reserve. Okay. In other words, all of a sudden, the value of the dollar starts dropping. I'm going to show you some articles here that show you what the Russians are thinking. It's important that we see things from the other person's point of view for them to know, for us to know what they're thinking. Now, let's go on. So it goes on to say Moscow is ready to offer mechanism to reduce the risk posed by sanctions. What are they saying? We're ready to go around the dollar. That's what it's saying. The issue was discussed earlier in the day at a meeting of the New Development Bank, the financial institution established by BRICS in 2015 to address the needs of developing countries. What they're saying is it was started in 2015 to go around the dollar. Such mechanisms would not involve Western financial infrastructure or would not involve the dollar. That's what they're saying. Let's go on. Such settlements have proven their reliability. In other words, we've already proven this out. We don't need the dollar anymore. And frankly, I'm shocked it hasn't already fallen, which is why 800, 200 gold, if you have, Lindsey Williams said it this way, if you have your money in paper, it is worth the paper it is written on. Meaning, if you got a pile of money in the bank, you have a chance to lose it. If you have it at 401k, IRA, if you have it, some kind of investment that's just paper, you have a very good possibility of losing it. I'm not a financial expert. I can't give you financial advice. But these people at 800, 200 gold can. That's what they do. Now, they're Christians. They're not going to advise you bad things. I believe that their heart is good. It's a good idea to just call them and say, okay, here's my situation. Am I okay? Maybe they say, yeah, you're okay, you're in good shape. Maybe they don't. Maybe they say, well, you're okay here, but this is a problem. And besides that, even if they suggest something and you say, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, fine. You don't have to do it. No one's going to come knocking on your door, twist your arm, and make you do it. But it's a good idea to get their opinion. Let's go on. So maintaining trade, turnover, and ensuring smooth settlements, that's all they want. But the dollar has been sanctioning them and telling them and forcing them to do what the West wants them to do. So since major Russian banks are cut off from the SWIFT system as of 2022, look, okay, so this is 3 years later. So were we expecting Russia to just stop trading with the world for 3 years? No. Matter of fact, my prayer, I pray that Trump and Steve Witkoff and the other American negotiators with Russia will not only drop all of the sanctions against Russia, but hopefully all or most of them against all of the BRICS nations and make it easy for those BRICS nations to stay in the dollar and to try honestly see things from the other person's point of view and to listen to the Russians and stop trying to be a big bully and push all the Russians around and try to become friends with the Russians and open up some good trade with the Russians. What's wrong with that? I don't understand why they can't do that. Let's go on. So major Russian banks were cut off from the SWIFT system in 2022. Moscow and many of its trading partners have stepped up efforts to reduce exposure to the Western financial system, or the dollar. That's what they're saying. Banks and businesses have sought to use alternative financial and banking platforms, in other words, go around the dollar. Bilateral trade hit $245 billion last year, with nearly all transactions now conducted in something other than the dollar. What are they doing? They're going around the dollar. What does that mean? That means that dollar, just like the prophecies say, down a third, worthless as leaves blowing in the wind. Then, someplace in there, they're going to come out with a new financial system. And by the way, my understanding is the new financial system wipes out, I don't know if it wipes out the Constitution, but my understanding is that it wipes out our past debt, it wipes out the Federal Reserve, it wipes out all of those Illuminati banking families. It's a whole new system. And I believe, according to Pastor Messiah, the Lord told him he got 6 months. 6 months where it'll be good. But then after 6 months, the devil takes over that too. You can imagine that. So it's a very good idea to get your money out of that system when the new system comes along within 6 months. Again, I can't give financial advice, but I'm telling you, that's my plan. All right, let's go on. So let me play a video. Listen carefully to what he says.
We understand the New Development Bank's caution. We are saying, and we discussed this just today at the meeting of the governors of the New Development Bank, that we are ready to offer mechanisms that would minimize the risks coming from Western sanctions against Russia. Those mechanisms would not involve Western financial infrastructure or settlement in currencies of those countries that imposed sanctions on Russia, and would secure the New Development Bank from possible risks. Settlements in national currencies have proven their reliability and independence from Western lending institutions that at any moment, as it turned out, can suspend payments. We use reliable banks that have established correspondent relations with each other, and within the framework of these correspondent relations, they ensure settlements for the trade turnover our nations have. We can see that trade turnover with China has increased over the past year. We hope that these same figures of increased turnover will also be maintained this year and will continue to grow. Therefore, establishing direct correspondent relations between credit institutions of the BRICS countries is one of the conditions for ensuring turnover through settlements and monetary funds.
Again, the Russians say national currencies free BRICS from Western pressure. What are they saying? They're saying that this new BRICS currency is going to free the BRICS countries from the dollar. Settling trade in national currencies offers BRICS countries a reliable alternative to the dollar, is what they're saying. Such mechanisms would involve Western financial structure. They're going around the dollar. There's another article here. Trump threatens BRICS with 10% duties. Okay, so instead of making it easy for the countries to stay in the dollar, now he also threatens them with high duties or high tariffs if they don't trade in the dollar. The world already kind of thinks Trump is a bully. They kind of think America in general is a bully. And it appears to me that this is just confirming it. So he's threatened tariffs on the BRICS nations to slap them with an additional 10% on top of all the other tariffs he's put on them. He's ready for tariffs not only on his members, but also on any country that aligns itself with the bloc or the BRICS nations, and accuses them of embracing anti-American policies. Well, look at, if we would quit slapping sanctions on them, if we'd let them use the dollar, they would use the dollar. But when our evil leaders of the past, if Trump were to call me, right here, Trump, call me. I'll give you my opinion. I'll say, make friends with the Russians. Drop the sanctions, or at least many as you can possibly drop. And that goes for all of the other BRICS countries. Make it easy for them to use the dollar. I used to be a sales course instructor for 13 years. And rule number one is when someone's trying to give you money, take it. Rule number two, make it easy for them to give you money. Well, America is violating both of those. We're not making it easy for them to use the dollar, and sometimes we're refusing them use to the dollar. So we're shooting our own self in the foot. Goes on to say he's ready for tariffs not only on its members, but also people that they trade with. BRICS was set up to hurt, as Trump says. They want to destroy the dollar as a global standard. Well, no, we're forcing them to destroy the dollar as the global standard by all of these sanctions, and they are talking about putting more on Russia. I'll show you, they got an article here. Major BRICS country responds to Trump's tariff threat. Trump warned that he'd slap another 10% duties on, but not just Russia. Indonesia, South Africa were the only two that he's actually sent a letter to saying, if you use BRICS, we're going to hit with another 10%. He goes on to say, according to Washington, Jakarta would be subject to a 32% rate that would grow to 42% of Trump's threat of extra duties on the bloc's members is realized. Now, if you really do rule the world, then I guess you could get by with that. If you really are the strongest economy, and if everybody really does have to come over and bend the knee to do business with you, then I suppose you got the authority to do that. But I question whether we're really that strong, especially since we got so many sins on us, so few people go to church anymore. I don't know that America has the authority to really back it up, okay? So what happens if more than one country gets together, like 27 BRICS countries already had a meeting and say, you know what? We don't like this Trump. We don't like all these tariffs. Let's just go around them. Let's just trade between ourselves. And all of a sudden, we lose trading partners en masse. Yeah, that could bring a lot of the prophecies on that we've been wondering how in the world they could come about. Let's go on. So what had just happened in Rio should terrify the West. The Rio summit reaffirmed BRICS' growing political weight and its ambition to become a key force in shaping the emerging multipolar, 126 joint commitments are adapted. It's saying that it's giving them the ambition to go around the dollar, spanning critical areas such as global governance reform, restructuring of national and financial, in other words, going around the dollar, strengthening global South cooperation for more inclusive and sustainable governments. World order. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about forming a world government. Where have we heard that before? Well, Daniel 9:27 for one. The bloc is increasingly positioning itself as a cohesive international actor. What? If you read between the lines, they're going away or around the dollar. Russia would not bend under sanctions. These are all Russian articles, by the way. Will not bend under sanctions, finance minister says. Many Western nations have imposed sweeping sanctions on Russia since 2022 over the Ukraine conflict, targeting sectors such as trade, energy, and finance. Well, the Russian economy has grown by over 4% over the last 2 years, and real incomes rose more than 7% last year. In other words, America, you ain't making the trip. You aren't shaking the tree. You aren't hurting Russia. And so what's Russia doing? They're buying gold. They're backing the ruble with gold. And they're about to come out with a BRICS currency and totally go around us. The article goes on to say our debt to GDP, this is Russia, stands at 15%, one of the best among the G20 countries. Our budget deficit is the lowest at just 1.7% in 2024. Russia is not a country that will bend under sanctions. First, our territory is vast. Do you realize the land mass that Russia has is about 5 times bigger than the land mass of America? Look at it. Dig out a map. 5 times bigger. Providing everything we need from energy, resources, food, intellectual capital. Second, in response to sanctions imposed by the G7 countries, we've reoriented our export and trade flows primarily toward BRICS nations, and we see that this strategy has succeeded. What are they saying? They're saying we've been going around the dollar for the last 3 years, and we kind of like it. We're doing pretty good, as a matter of fact. Matter of fact, we don't need your dollar. And there's many other countries joining the pack. The reforms, he said, have helped reduce the country's reliance on global energy market. It's not just the global energy market. It's self-reliance against the dollar. They don't need the dollar. Next article says, Trump announces stinging tariffs on U.S. allies in Asia. So it's, in this case, South Korea and Japan. It's almost like, and I like Trump. I like him for a lot of reasons. I'd probably do a whole program on why I like him. But some of the things he does concern me. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. South Korea and Japan are some of our closest friends, and he is alienating them. Yes, I agree that they've not treated us right, but we've been allowing it. So in my opinion, he needs to be very kind and very patient and very understanding. Yes, I think he should make the playing field level. Okay, I do agree with that. But don't do it in such a way to where you're making everybody mad at us. And that's my concern. He warned that another 25% could flow against Japan and South Korea if they raise their tariffs in response. And of course, he doesn't bluff. We've learned that. Trump also imposed 25% tariffs on goods on Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Tunisia. Higher rates will apply to imports from South Africa, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Indonesia, Serbia. Okay, so it appears to me he didn't, he's not walking softly. He's carrying a big stick, but he seems to be swinging in a lot of directions. And I hope that he is not making a bunch of enemies of nations that used to be our friends. Now, so far, he's been right. I agree. I just hope that so far keeps up for a long time. Dollar enduring worst since 1973. So look at what the dollar is doing. The greenback has dropped over 10% in 2025 amid U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs and rising deficits. The U.S. dollar has fallen more than 10%. The New York Times reported, of course, the New York Times is, low credibility. The ICE, U.S. dollar index, which measures the dollar against a basket of other major currencies, has dropped 10.8% year to date. The last time the dollar saw a comparable drop at the start of the year was 1973, following the end of the link of gold. So what we're saying is America could be in a lot of trouble. Trump is now threatening Brazil with 50% tariffs if they don't stop the witch hunt. Well, he did the same thing to Israel. So they were coming after Netanyahu, kind of like they came after Trump. Now they're coming after the Brazil former president that he did not win the election, but he, like Trump, is standing up trying to say, I was cheated. And so they're trying to throw him in jail, just like they were trying to throw Trump in jail. So he's going down there with a battle axe and beating on Brazil. I hope he can pull it off. I hope he can continue to bless our nation. But I am concerned. And even though I like him, and even though I agree with, I almost everything he does, I can't even think of anything I disagree with. My concern is I don't want to see him making enemies. That's my concern. It may be that these countries will bend the knee and say, yes, sir, we will back off attacking Netanyahu and this Brazilian president. Maybe they'll do that. Maybe they won't raise the tariffs. Or maybe they go to a BRICS meeting and they say, you know what? I'm fed up, not just with Trump, I'm fed up with the dollar. I'm fed up with these sanctions. Who are they to tell us that we can't trade? See, so I'm only trying to say it could be good or it could be real bad. We're having a prophecy, healing, and deliverance conference. Now, this is only at our small church. There's only 100 people, room for 100 people. So if you want to go, you got to go to prophecyclub.com, click on this right here. Over here on the right, see the red arrows pointing. Click on that, and it'll take you back over to this where you can register. It tells you all about it. When the suitcase nukes, I didn't say if, I said when the suitcase nukes go off, if you want your car to start, if you want your computers and your refrigerators and things like that, anything with a computer chip to work, you want to have one of these from EMPShield.com. EMPShield.com. And they have videos up there. It takes about 10 minutes to put on. It's not complicated at all. And if you use the word prophecy, promo code prophecy, you get a $50 discount, and it helps your Prophecy Club.